Hello everybody and welcome back to artofdino.com and saveearth.us, and today I have got a slightly disappointing but also invigorating kind of discovery for you, and I found it in the New York Herald, Wednesday, November 19th, 1879, an article called "The Arctic Mystery: An English Friar's Voyages in the Northern Seas, Friar Nicholas of Lynn, How Medieval Cartographers Exaggerated and Moderns Slighted an Explorer, Franz Joseph Land 5 cycles ago." So, this is a very interesting article that kind of blew my mind, because I have come to have fallen in love with the beauty of the Mercator map and its depiction of the North Pole. And to me, for a pretty long time, pretty much until today, I guess, the that depiction seemed like something that was discovered and then lost and passed on, and maybe that I kind of had the impression that that was one of those things that kind of leaked out. But I guess in this world nothing does, and I should have gotten used to that. I should have probably known that. But this article kind of smashes that vision of there being the Rupus Negra, the big magnetic rock, and then all of those 4 islands around it that look like they're orchestrated and like they're created and look like they were designed by that way to be the center of something awesome that lies beyond our realm of knowing. And so I am a little bit disappointed in what I am about to read, but it also sounds very interesting, and again, it kind of just leaves the mystery even more wide open. And there's also a book involved by this guy. He wrote a book that is gone. It was lost about 100 years after he did it. So there may be some kind of magic in the fact that this guy that I'm talking about, that Friar Nicholas, he may have discovered something amazing, written a book on it, and then it was lost, and then these people deliberately steered everything the wrong way, like they do with the shape of the earth and all these other maps and different things that they've done, because they know people will trust whatever survives, and or at least find interest in it, and whatever doesn't will just kind of will be forgotten immediately. And so that could have happened here, where he made the true discoveries and then it got lost and just eradicated on purpose by the controllers. Who knows what the surrounding stories are, but I'm going to read this article for you and chime in from time to time, and I might skip a couple parts because a couple parts are a little slow, but overall it gives a great impression of what I'm talking about, and by the end, you'll be able to judge for yourself what you think is up there and what you think it looks like. I'll show a couple other maps from around the time that are mentioned in the story and some other things that are mentioned in the article, so you guys can check those out, because there are different depictions of that zone, and they're all based on kind of these lost stories and these lost travels and the lost books by a bunch of different travelers from the past that were not destined to keep their destiny alive. So here we go. I am going to read this article. I hope you enjoy it. In 1360, or nearly 500 years after Other, the Norwegian navigator, while living in England, related his Arctic voyage to King Alfred, by whom it was recorded, an English monk sailed to the seas of the north of Norway for discovery. This navigator, Nicholas de Lina, was a Franciscan friar and famous mathematician of Lynn in Norfolk. He was the possessor of great learning, being well known for his astronomical calculations as well as for his daring explorations toward the pole. He made a calendar or almanac covering the years from 1387 to 1463, and wrote a treatise upon the astrolabe, a form of astronomical instrument invented by the Arabians and used in determining points of latitude. I'd like to find that too, but again, lost. I have a feeling this guy knew a lot that the powers did not want to come out. Chaucer and de Lina were contemporaries and possibly scholastic rivals, since Chaucer himself wrote a treatise upon the astrolabe and was a mathematician of some repute. Being ambitious in mathematics as well as poetry, Chaucer may have regarded de Lina unfavorably as a rival in scientific work. It appears probable, from the ill use he made of an opportunity, very likely imaginary, to injure the ambitious monk by a reckless exercise of poetic license and an unscrupulous pen. It is believed that de Lina was made the unsavory hero of the Miller's Tale in the Canterbury Tales. Again, very interesting. This clerk's yellowbid was hand Nicholas. I don't know what that means. On the other hand, it has been concluded that the father of English poetry was really a joke. Okay, this is kind of blah, 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 blah. That's a little unnecessary. Whatever the acquaintance and relations blah, 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 existing between the poet and the well-nigh forgotten English navigator of the Arctic seas, there is no denying that the voyages of de Lina were as real as the military exploits of Edward III, to whom the monk presented a manuscript account of his voyages. De Lina's book was entitled Inventio Fortunata, or Innuentio Fortunata, Fortunate Discovery, and was accepted authority for geographical statements and cartographical delineations made from 300 to 400 years ago, as well as more recently. De Lina's narrative being written and presented to the great king during the exciting times following Edward's war with France, and while a terrible pestilence had hardly ceased raging in England, was necessarily a tame relation compared with recitals of the terror of battle and pestilence. Hence it was overlooked by the British public. The English people were then, as a mass, exceedingly illiterate, and while the scholars were unduly interested in the vulgarities of Chaucer, cared only for accounts of continental conquest and bloodshed. So ignorant, especially of geography, were the English in the 14th century that Robert of Avesbury declared that the British ambassador, merchants, and others residing in Rome in 1344, hearing that Pope Clement VI had granted Louis of Spain the title of Prince of the Fortunate Islands, the Canaries, and becoming firmly persuaded that Louis was thereby appointed Prince of Britain, they immediately made haste home in August to give information thereof. The next paragraph, De Lina in Franz Joseph Land. Ranulphus de Higden should here be mentioned as a geographer of note who was a contemporary of de Lina and Chancer. He produced a map of the world exhibiting an island discovered in the Polar Sea by de Lina in 1360. The island, from its location and description, seems to be that now called Gillis Land, and Higden declares that de Lina explored it. Beyond de Lina's island is set down a land where a monastery was located. Interesting. The land of the monastery, now so recently discovered and named Franz Joseph Land, at the northeastward from the Spitzbergen Islands, was visited and described by Niccolo Laieno, a Venetian navigator, but a few years after de Lina was there. King Edward may have done something to commemorate de Lina's voyages. It is not unlikely that the compass displayed upon the coin, called the Golden Noble, of that king refers to the discoveries of Nicholas at the north. Interesting. This coin, bearing on one side a representation of the king standing in a ship as the ruler of the seas, was issued after de Lina's first voyage and his most important discovery of islands and floating icebergs. Hence, possibly the emblems, little winged globes, appearing at the extremity of the compass. These might refer to the newly discovered islands of fixed land or floating ice. Interesting. His voyage is known in Norway. In Norway, during the 14th century, men of learning possessed the substance of de Lina's general theory of the situation of the Arctic seas and lands, as well as a knowledge of his voyages, and they communicated their information to investigators. Jacob or James Quawkes of Basco in Brabant wrote in the 14th century a work entitled History of a Voyage Through All Asia, Africa, and the North. This book was used in its de Lina relation adopted by Gerhard Mercator, the great geographer and map constructor, in fixing the leading features of the Arctic regions on his great map of the world in 1569. But he made strange mistakes in the polar parts of his great map through a misunderstanding of de Lina's statements. There it is. Sad, heart-wrenching almost in some way, because the symmetry and the coolness of that design was just so sweet. It just left so much to want to go see and so much to the imagination. But I guess in some way, there's more to the imagination now because we have no idea what that stuff will look like or what's beyond it. Now we have absolutely none. But it keeps going, so if you weren't convinced from that couple sentences, then here, keep reading. Huylen's quaint account interpreted. Huylen, I don't know what his real name is spelt, the old cosmographer, gives a version of the monk's discoveries differing somewhat from that of Hakluyt in his voyages. Huylen says, Under the Arctic Pole is said to be a black rock, Gillisland, of wondrous height, about 33 leagues in compass, the land adjoining being torn by the sea into 4 great islands. Mercator. That's what Mercator went with. These appear to be 4 divisions of Greenland, which continent proper really extends from Cape Farewell to some undetermined point eastward of the present Wilczek land. A map of the Arctic seas and lands to be found in Ruskeli's Ptolemy Geography, 1561, sets these divisions clearly forth. One division lies south of Boyktfjord, the second between this long gulf and St. Thomas's Gulf, the third from this gulf of islands to the strait or river of Zeno, and the fourth eastward therefrom, for the ocean violently breaking through it and disgorging itself by 19 channels, the various straits among the islands about Gillisland, maketh 4 Euripi, or fierce whirlpools, by which the waters are finally carried toward the north and there swallowed into the bowels of the earth. Hollow earth, perhaps? That's maybe how that theory came about, is just from this. But still, that's one thing that's very similar, is the whirlpools. And that's got to mean something. It's got to mean absolutely something incredible, whatever it is. The Euripi, or whirlpools, are to be understood as the 4 great Arctic basins, where the Gulf Stream and other currents sweep across or around in curves. These basins are probably the Great Gulf at the northwest of Spitsbergen, the sea southwest of Spitsbergen, the Barents Sea between the North Cape of Norway, Spitsbergen and Nova Zembla, and the Arctic Ocean at the north of Siberia, or the Scythic Ocean. It is not at all probable that Delina used the designation Euripi. The wide Scythic Ocean would not be called Euripus. The term possibly came from the misunderstanding of Knox of Brabant, that, quote, Euripus or whirlpool, which is made by the Scythic Ocean, hath 5 inlets, and by reason of his straight passage and violent course is never frozen. These 5 inlets seem to be the 2 passages south of Nova Zembla into the Kara Sea, which is a part of the Scythic Ocean. The Matoshkin Shar, or strait dividing that great land, the broad passage between the north part of Nova Zembla and the part of northeast Greenland, called Wilczek land, and the great fjord through that land discovered by Niccolo Zeno in the 14th century. It seems from the accounts of the most trustworthy investigators that the great Scythic Ocean at the north of Central Asia is rarely, if ever, frozen, excepting along the south coast and islands. The other, on the back of Greenland, being 37 leagues long, hath 3 inlets and remaineth frozen 3 months yearly. Greenland was a name applied to Spitsbergen, which was accounted a part of Greenland in the Middle Ages, and long before the English after its rediscovery by Willoughby and by Hudson called it Greenland. The length of the smallest of the 4 basins, estimated at 37 leagues, seems likely to be the northerly extent of the Old Norse North Bottom, or Gulf, from the headland of the main of above Gillisland. This cape is called the promontory, on the Zeno map of the locality in 1380. The 3 inlets to the Great Gulf at the northwest and north of Spitsbergen are the great opening between West Spitsbergen and the Greenland coast, Hinlopen Strait, and the strait between Northeast Land and Gillisland, or De Linna's Island. The sea about Spitsbergen is known by all to be frozen at least 3 months each season. And I showed some Google Earth pictures of this whole area, but we cannot trust that at all. As far as accuracy and what it looks like technically if you were to be above it, all of that is wrong. Just like there's just no way. So we can't really tell. Maybe they are organized in some way that closely resembles some of these old maps like Mercator, but I have a feeling there's just more and more kind of dissonance in order to hide what is really there. The next paragraph or section says, under the pole. The phrase under the pole, when used by ancient writers, does not mean at the pole, as Mercator seems by his map to have understood De Linna's mention and location of the mountain island. Hecataeus of Abdera, the Greek historian in the 4th century BC, considered the inhabitants of Albion Hyperboreans, and said, quote, they inhabit a great island in the sea, opposite to Gaul and under the North Pole. So again, That's 4th century BC. So things are constantly being hidden, and I think that again is why this guy's book was stolen and lost and removed from our collection. Maybe somewhere else it exists, but not in the public. De Lina never reached the geographic pole as Reich upon his remarkable map 1507-8 and Mercator on his great map 1569 indicated, and as they believed. The learned monk's farthest northing was at our present Franz Joseph land, then well known by Norsemen and others, in the resort of traders from Iceland, Norway, and Scarborough in England. De Lina passed the height or the latitude of the magnetic pole as he determined it. Knox, Roosh, Dee, and Mercator evidently mistook De Lina's mention of the magnetic for the geographic pole, and therefore naturally fell into the errors of statement that have until now, by gross mistake, puzzled students and geographers, and all of us. A cold devil's help. According to Hyland, an ancient writer named Blundeville declared that he did not believe that the Oxford friar, without the assistance of some cold devil of the middle region of the air, and consequently able to endure all weathers, could approach so near as to measure these cold countries with his astrolabe. That's one thought, but again, we've also heard different accounts of people that say it gets warmer over there, and like birds that travel go and they go beyond that area, and they come from someplace that is warmer beyond there. Maybe there's another sun, maybe our sun travels further than we think, maybe there's multiple suns, who knows, but so you got to take that into account as well. Misinterpretation, 5 voyages. The voyages of De Lina from Lynn and Scarborough to the northern seas were altogether, so far as known, 5 or 6 in number. And I've never heard of this guy before. I've never seen him on any of the other kind of lists of Arctic explorers. So again, that's interesting as well. This fact was ascertained by the careful investigations of Dr. John Dee in the 16th century, my distant relative. No reasonable doubt that the voyages were made can exist when the geographical misconceptions in regard to them are explained. All geographers of repute in the 3 centuries following the voyages accepted them as trustworthy relations. That's how it grows. Mercator's map, big game of telephone, gone wrong. Mercator's map, 1569, has been believed to be a correct cartographical delineation of the monk's statements, and, as in modern times, the map is found not to harmonize with an increasing knowledge of the polar regions. De Lina has been charged with ignorance or deception. It is not difficult to appreciate the points of misunderstanding. De Lina was right, Mercator was wrong. The latter's map exhibits the high rocks of Gillisland as a mountain peak of vast dimensions situated at the polar center. This mountain is surrounded by a gulf connecting with the Northern Ocean by 4 long straits with numerous subdivisions at their southern extremity. Nothing appearing from De Lina ever warranted such an astounding piece of map drawing. That stinks. The limit of his explorations. Johann Reusch was the first cartographer who attempted to show the entire voyages and discoveries of De Lina upon a map. In the Ptolemy Geography of 1507, here's a map of Reusch exhibiting the 4 islands of De Lina, the 4 straits, and the 19 channels, and I'll include this map a few times in this video. It is excellent. All these geographical features set down upon the Reusch map are, however, as arbitrary as those of Mercator, though both were honestly devised to delineate the statements of De Lina. Had either of these authors ever visited the polar seas, he would have realized his mistake in supposing De Lina could survey the entire circle of the polar ocean and determine the whole number of its straits and channels by personal observation during no more than 5 or 6 brief voyages. Sad but true. The explorations of De Lina were in reality limited to the region of and route to Franz Joseph Land. His topographical descriptions, as preserved by Knox, the German author, clearly point to these localities alone. De Lina may have been the discoverer of the extinction of the colony on the west coast of Greenland, which had occurred about 1349. I wonder what happened there. He received credit for vastly more work than he ever accomplished or claimed, and his enthusiastic admirers, by their zeal to enlarge his field of work and magnify his fame, unhappily succeeded in robbing him, in the eyes of superficial modern readers and investigators, of all credence and approbation. That makes sense, because we've never heard of him. His really great discoveries have been obscured too long. A vindication of the brave and learned old monk is not too late. It is better late than never. Agreed. So, I mean, it took, till 2024? But I'm not sure. I've never seen this online before by anyone else, but it's probably out there. Who knows? You all may know of this, and I'm just getting late to the party, but it's news to me. Why Delina went north. Lynn, in Norfolk, was the seat of commercial enterprise in the remote seas of the north as early as the time of Edward II in the 14th century. Haakon, king of Norway, according to the accounts of that time, complained to Edward that certain sons of antiquity of the town of Len, trading in the north, had murdered one of his subjects. Uh-oh. In 1380, there was established a considerable fishery trade between England and Iceland, Bristol being one of the points of departure for merchants. Columbus in 1477 sailed, it is believed, from Bristol to Iceland when he made his notable Arctic voyage. Scarborough was an English port whose traders went to the furthest north in the 14th century, according to the Policy of the Sea, a medieval poem relating to British commerce. But why did Nicholas de Lina, a friar, undertake the exploration of polar seas in the determination of topographical conditions at the furthest attainable limits of navigation? The monks of the Middle Ages were the scholars and scientists of their time. De Lina was especially notable among those men to whom we are indebted for so large a part of the remains of ancient literature and learning. An undoubted student of Ptolemy's great geography or catalogue of places with reported latitudes, he seems to have desired to fix the latitude of regions not well known to the ancient geographer. By the loss of de Lina's work, we are doubtless deprived of his table of latitudes in the north. And then it gets a little random here, not really much of importance, and there's some parts in this commerce and religion section that are pretty good. So it says, de Lina's northern voyages do not appear to have been undertaken for scientific investigation alone. There were substantial commercial motives for his efforts. Let's see. In fact, some of the monks were the most enterprising English merchants of that age. They united in a trade organization called the Brotherhood of St. Thomas Becket in 1358 and extended their enterprises to the continent, where they established quote-unquote staples or branch agencies into the remotest accessible coasts of the Northern Ocean. There they engaged in trade in stock or dried and powdered fish, oil, walrus ivory, sealskins, and elder down. The great staple of the Brotherhood for the cloth trade was at Bruges, where Count Louis of Flanders gave them leave to traffic, and it was long famous. So early as 1380, the northern trade had attained considerable importance. In 1406, King Henry IV granted a charter to the trading monks. The Company of Merchants Adventurers grew out of this association many years later. De Lina probably made several of his voyages in the interest of the St. Thomas Brotherhood. Astonishing as the assertion may be, it is nevertheless true that there was a little colony of fishermen and monks located and well established at the region now called Franz Joseph Land when de Lina went there in 1360. The settlement was afterward called Alba. Here existed a monastery in 1360. A Venetian navigator visited the place in the latter part of the same century, and to his surprise found a little community of active and hospitable people engaged in various fisheries and holding commercial and other communication with several countries at the south. The little church at Alba was dedicated to St. Thomas, and the monastery existed in the early part of the 16th century. And again, these people are trading with other states and other places, so it all comes down to who controls the information. There could be an entire history of everything up there, totally whatever, that could exist there, where a tribe of people may have come down with all these books, a library of all these books from beyond the poles, illustrating everything we want to know. And then at one point, that little civilization or tribe of people could have just been ravaged, destroyed, lit on fire, and then done. Everything is lost. So there are so many opportunities to lose the knowledge that is what we are all looking for, and they know that. The people in control know that, and so it is really easy to just make up everything about this reality and pass it off as reality, even though it's all fairy tale. And then the truth just remains hidden, and nobody can go to these places, nobody can sail to these places, and nobody can fly there, or the governments will stop them. So the hands and the information, the valuable, priceless information that could unite all of humanity, rests in the hands of pretty much the worst people alive. Pretty terrible. But the last paragraph says, does his full story exist? It will be a matter not more surprising than desirable if Nicholas de Lina's book, Inventio Fortunata, is sometime found in one of the many English collections of manuscripts where it probably lies, practically lost, under some changed title. Fortunate, indeed, was the old Oxford scholar when he ascertained the latitude of the Arctic lands and places and arranges commercial relations with the people living near Mount Reichtoven. He was unfortunate as well in his failure to receive from modern historians and geographers the recognition his remarkable enterprise and labor deserved. More of his history will sometime appear from a search in dusty book nooks and among neglected archives. And then it ends with a little poem or something that says, "With care they still recording tablets keep of all the limits of the land and deep, wherever rivers flow or storms prevail, wherever men can march or ships can sail." Very interesting again. And so they knew at this time in the 1870s, they were very intelligent. They had theories just like us. Not much has changed. Not much has been added to the overall truth of this Arctic mystery, this near eternal Arctic mystery in our present reality and for our realm, where we just can't get the answers that we seek, which would, again, like I said, unite humanity. If new land opens up during our time, which I pray it does during our lives here, it will be an unbelievable moment for all of us. But it can't happen with the current governments that are just disgusting and trying to kill us in every possible way. It can't happen that way because they would seize upon it and ruin it for everyone. The world needs to get to a place where we can accept these things, where we're ready for these things, where we're eager to discover these things, and where we're all ready to understand, comprehend them. We're not going to fight each other and be like, no, but science. That needs to all disappear. People, somewhere, somebody needs to blow the whistle on this ever most important fact that will just make every single other thing of the news completely devalued and useless, like it already is, but to everyone on a massive scale, so that nobody listens to these fools anymore, and then the truth can just continue to prevail, because it must. It's the only chance we have, is discovering where we all came from, who is watching us, who is behind here, who is controlling us, how long have they done it for, what is our purpose, who created us, all of these amazing things. How far is this realm go? How big is this massive universe, and what is it really like? Because NASA and everyone is feeding us total garbage, and we need to find the truth. We will one day. So again, I'm sorry for bursting anyone's bubble about the Mercator Four Lands map. Again, I'm just as sad as you are. I've drawn stuff like that several times, but again, now we got to get back to the imagination, back to the drawing board, and now it even promotes and provides an even more need for us all to figure out these answers and someday explore beyond where we are allowed. Maybe it's the hollow earth, maybe it's just an infinite plane, maybe it will fall off and end up somewhere, who knows. I doubt that, but I have a feeling it's something amazing, and I still tend to, overall, out of all this research throughout time, all these different things I've thought, I still believe the Jainism and Jains to be the most accurate and the most beautiful of all. 6 billion miles wide, 6 billion miles high, and we are only covering about 1% or less of that we know of. So I like to believe that there's just unfathomable in every direction, and but we're all free to believe what we want. So believe what you can, but again, Mercator, sorry, but can't rely on you anymore. Either way, let's free our minds to discover what we need, and we will. Bless you all. Check out artofdino.com and Save Earth and join forces with us. We need all of you to unite. You people, everyone seeing this video is a possible member of Save Earth. Your ideas are important. I would love to hear them. And again, it's a public charity that I founded, but I want everyone to be a part of it. It is our charity, but not for those who want to steer the people in the wrong direction. Only people designed and with the intention of enlightening the world and making the world a better place and saving it from the monsters that control it. That is our purpose, and doing it creatively is how it's going to get done. And we need more and more people, so join. SaveEarth.us. Bless you all.